All right, we are back with some more Cypress testing. And by the way, in this video, I'm gonna not show my video, and I hope that means that maybe the final video does not include my video taking up I don't know, 10%, 20% of the whole frame. Who knows? I don't know. I'm using Google Meet to record all these because it's just the simplest way to do screen recordings. Not the highest quality, 720p, but it's mostly just text, and so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. All right, so in the last video, we started to pull out or abstract some of the specific details about the household, and that was all so that we could assert what that final post request body looked like. And since we were going to kind of, since we needed to do this, since we needed to build up this final form value anyway, we kind of decided, hey, at some level, it's probably beneficial if we start using these same values in place of the hard-coded values in the spec itself. Okay. We only did the first spec, the one-member household. And so let's actually now do this for the two-member household. Remember that a few videos ago, we did do just a little bit of abstraction, like the household count and the member household names. That's fine. We're actually going to kind of go further with that and basically do this thing. So what I really like to do as frequently as possible when I'm developing is copy and paste things that I know are like valid solutions to things, and they just kind of accelerate development. So instead of saying like, hey, let's start from scratch and build a household. Well, I know that this was a pretty good, that this was a good example of a one-person household. And so let's go up here and start to build out this two-person household. Remember, if we want to reference this variable in the it block and potentially anywhere else, we want it to kind of live at one layer higher or one scope higher. And so that's up here just in the top level describe block. By the way, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, it appears that we're just duplicating a bunch of code. And you're absolutely right. We are duplicating code, but you know, one of the kind of very frequently misunderstood things about dry or don't repeat yourself is that it is this kind of absolute of any kind of repetition of code is bad. Well, that's not really true. And so certainly where it makes sense to generalize or abstract code for purposes of you know, long-term maintenance and things like that, or really just readability or making things easier to update, those are all great reasons to follow the dry principle. But there's another principle called wet, W-E-T, which is write everything twice. And that kind of helps us to realize there is some value in writing things multiple times, having duplicate code, because it allows us to understand, as we're going to do in this video, and maybe the next one, it allows us to start to understand where the commonalities are between pieces of code and maybe where they differ and how exactly to generalize these things so that we can you know, reduce our code duplication, but not go to such an extreme level of abstraction or indirection that things become unreadable. So, okay, I've just done copy and paste, and I'm just going to close this out here for a moment so that we can really focus on our two-member household. So probably the first thing that we want to do is say, what is our household look like? So we've got kind of this final form value. Actually, while I just said we're going to close that, let's just leave this open for comparison's sake, just so we have like a nice reference, and we'll probably want to duplicate some stuff down here, like making this assertion, that's fine. So let's begin to look at this household member 1 and just see if it still represents the first member of the household that we'd like. And I don't think anything really needs to change here. They have some number of residences, which is 1 at this point. They've lived in 1 county all the months of the year. They had no coverage during the year, and there are our household members, and the final form value is the household members. And so really, I think most of this stuff is going to stay exactly the same. We really just need to kind of duplicate this person. All right. So I can do that. There's a keyboard shortcut, which is just basically, let's see, let me select the right thing. I'm holding Alt-Shift down, so that just kind of like duplicates the exact thing. I'm going to get an immediate error because there is already a variable with the name household member 1, and since it is a const, I can't reinitialize it, so I'll just change this to 2. And then immediately I'm going to put this in the array of household members. And all of a sudden, we realize that really from here down, and I realize it's not a lot of code, from here down, we're good to go. This is the list of household members. We're passing that into the final form value, and that's it. I think the next thing that we want to make sure that we do is we update this assertion down here with the final form value. All right. Now, before we go any further, let's just find out, you know, kind of where our spec is at. So we're updating the 2-member household, and let's click on the 2-member household and just find out, like, has anything immediately broken because we're now, you know, initializing this variable. Okay, well, yes, something is. Something is breaking because we're asserting that that final form value, or that post request body or payload looks like this form value that we've created, which it definitely doesn't, right? Because all we've done is duplicate the primary member and put them as the second member. So already we've established a failing test. So something is failing, and we need to make it go green. So how can we do that? Well, we could, let me bring this window back over. We could go in here and we could inspect the console and check out what it actually looked like. And, you know, we may end up doing that in a moment, just to kind of find out what it looks like. But let's also use our understanding of the system and make sure that this second member reflects what we think the payload should be. So the danger, obviously, in just relying on what the actual payload looked like and just kind of duplicating that is that we might not catch, you know, maybe a simple error. And so, you know, we can build the object by hand and know, or have some better expectation that these values are authoritative. These are the actual values which we would hope to be sent through, because this is the particular composition of the household, or combination of residences or coverages. So let's go ahead and do that now. Household member 1 isn't going to change, so no problem there. Household member 2, right off the bat, well, this is not the primary member, so let's change that to false. And then what should the relationship be? Well, I think we said it was going to be spouse. And what's nice is we do get that, you know, that autocomplete, because TypeScript knows that this is a household member and that there are a limited number of values that we can assign to relationship. So we'll do spouse. Remember, capital S spouse is only for the UI. So if we were to try to put in capital S spouse, that would be wrong. We want to make sure that it's lowercase. The second thing is that the person's name is Susie. And we know that. We can go down to member, the first one where we're filling out the household, and we're saying we were typing in household member names 1, and that was John and Susie. Let's actually get rid of these for just a moment, because I want to actually kind of highlight something. We had household members up here, and in our first spec, the way we're referencing those is household member name, or household member 1.name and household member 1.dob.month, things like that. We're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to get rid of these two things here, and immediately we get an error because those variables don't exist anymore. And I'm just going to grab what we did over here with spec number 1 and put these in here. So we have household member number 1.name and household member 2.name. And let's just double check that our spec is at least continuing to pass up to that point. And so what is it erroring about? Well, it says at some point we're supposed to get to the point where we say, tell us about someone. And so it needs us to make sure that we have the correct name. So the first one would be household member 1. And you can see here, oops, left a bracket in there. You can see that there's a few other errors down the way. So let's just make sure that we're updating those. Oops. So this should be household member 1.name. And then member 2 detail page, well, this is going to be household member 2.name, and then household also member 2.name. And let's just see over here if we get to the end of the form where it still breaks on the, actually one more place where we need to put in another name. Let's see. So it should be marketplace coverage. Cool. Oh, and this is actually member 2, and this should be member 2. So, you know, as we go through this, and I'm having to make all of these minute adjustments to, you know, now we change the way that we reference this person, this person's name. And now we have to update like the reference to that variable. You know, all that stuff is pretty tedious. And where my mind is at is how can we eventually generalize a lot of this stuff to not even care about how we reference that variable. And we'll look at that in a little bit. Essentially, it's going to require us to abstract a lot of these like specific references away, and for us to really just pass in the whole form value as an object, and for all of these assertions to just be made automatically. So we'll get there, probably not in this video, but let's keep going. We're going to come back over to our Cypress test. And by the way, you know, it's a little difficult to go back and forth between the code and the Cypress test, but you know, most developers these days have multiple monitors. And so, you know, it's easy to put your code editor on one and your Cypress test on another, and just kind of, you know, be looking back and forth. So for the purposes of the video, I've got to keep hiding and showing it, but you can see, okay, now we've made it back to this assertion of our request payload. So that's great. That's where we want to get back to, essentially. That's still failing. But it's not failing anywhere else in the whole user flow where we might have changed a reference to a variable. All of that stuff is passing now, so that's fantastic. All right, let's get back to this household member 2. So primary member is false, relationship is spouse, name is Susie. Just want to double check the date of birth is 1/1/79, and that's probably what we want to bring over from this one. So we've got the member 1 detail page, and the way we referenced it over here was just like this. I'm actually just going to grab this entire block and replace it. That way I know those details are now abstracted away. We're just referencing whatever this variable has been initialized to, so we don't actually care anymore. We're not actually asserting on hard-coded values. It's just all driven off that that top value. And then because we have a second member of the household that we do need a date of birth, I'm actually going to do the same thing and just drop this in. Now, of course, we need to have member name 2, and I can actually do that by hitting Control D, and so it'll select all 1s, and I'll go back to 2. And now we can look at our Cypress test, and it should still get all the way to the end and then fail on that assertion. Okay, that's fine. And let's see, what else might we need to update? Well, first of all, I can tell you that the residences, this is an interesting situation. Right now, the form does not collect this information, but it does need to be sent through. I don't think it really matters whether we keep this. We certainly won't be referencing this in the form, but I think it still needs to come through as is. So let's leave that for now. And I actually, at this point, I'm not totally sure why the form values aren't the same. So let's see if we can now get into the assertion. So we'll open this up. So we'll say, what was the actual and what was the expected? All right. The household count, oh, here we go. The expected household count was 1, but the actual household count was 2. All right, that should have been caught way earlier. My bad. So the household count is 2. Well, hang on. Should this be hard coded? Should this be a hard coded value? I don't think it should. This is kind of a derived value, right? And so what should it be? What would be the generalized value? 2 is the concrete value. What is the generalized value? Well, it's household members dot length, right? Same thing over here. We'll update that. Household members dot length, because how many ever members we're passing into this array, which is also what we pass to the members property, that is the expectation. If there's 2, it's going to be 2. So let's come back over here to our spec. Let's restart it. Let's see how far it gets. Okay, so still failing. That's okay. But now at least we can go in and we've kind of updated that assertion. And so those things shouldn't be different now. Oops. Great. So household confirmation is true. Household count is 2. State, ME, tax year 2022. Great. So something maybe in the members array is what's happening. So let's take a look at each one. So we've got coverage, date of birth. Name is John. Primary member is true. Relationship is self. That's fine. Let's look at the secondary member, which is Susie. So we'll kind of collapse John. And we'll look at Susie. So date of birth looks correct. Susie, false. Spouse. Her coverage is all false. Coverage is all false. That's cool. So far, haven't seen anything that's like wildly different. Let's dig into the residences array. So we'll take a look at John first. We'll look at his residences. And so he's got county, should be that. Months, all true. And let's look at his actual, or is this the expected, which is county, months, all true. All right, nothing obviously jumping out at me just yet. Let's dig into Susie's residences, which again, she doesn't actually get to set because, ooh, and this could be it, is that because she doesn't get to set her residences, I bet they're going to be blank or something. Ha ha, yes. Great. So here's what we've discovered. We've discovered a bug, or not so much a bug, but production code that has not yet been written to ensure that the any secondary members on the form just have the same address or the same county information as the primary member. And then make sure that the months that they've lived there are also the same as the primary member. So this is what we need to do. We need to write some production code. We have produced a failing test. And so let me just kind of really clarify what's happening here. We have produced a failing test for this second scenario now that makes an assertion on the right form value. This is the right form value, okay? She should have the same residence as the primary member. Again, all of these are true, which should match that all of those are true, but we're missing the production code to actually make that happen. And so we should do that right now. Let's figure that out. I'm going to come into, let's see. So let's talk about a couple different places that this could happen. First of all, there is a very final form service. There is a very final step where this is the household service. Let's see. So I think it's on the review. No, it's the results page. So let's go into the results page, which is premium tax credits, results. So let's open this up here. So this is the estimate that gets put into the DOM. And what this is doing is it's calling the estimate service. We've injected it. It's calling the estimate service, and it's using an observable to subscribe to this. So it's not like a method call in the template. It's an observable stream of data that's being piped into the template. But there is a place where we can hook into that, and that is basically right here. So what we could do is we could open up the get SLCSP estimate, and we could say, hey, when this form value comes in as is, so this is the form value itself when it comes in, what we could do is make the transformation here. All right, we could do that. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back, and let's say there's another spot that we could put this in, which would be perhaps the place where we move from the member detail pages. So member 1 detail, member 1 coverage, member 2 detail, member 2 coverage, to the review page. There's a review page, and kind of make sure that when we are done filling out the form, that we actually update the form value to be the same as the primary member. All right. I know that's a little convoluted, and you might not have all of the details here because you didn't write this code and you're just kind of like watching this after the fact. But let me suggest to you that so there's a principle, a design principle called the principle of least knowledge. Okay, or some of us, or this is kind of tangential to separation of concerns, where you really want to make sure that the thing that should be responsible for something or should have knowledge of something is the thing that has awareness or knowledge of it, is concerned about it, and things that should not be concerned about it are not aware of it and not knowledgeable about it. And so I would suggest, or I would propose, that this get SLCSP estimate method, this class method, where it takes the form value and sends it off to the API and gets something back, it really probably shouldn't know that we've done some manual manipulation of the form itself. It should really just say, hey, give me the form value and I'll hit the API, and that's it. And so the estimate service is almost definitely not the place where we want to make that transform. So where should we make the transform? Where are we actually going to make that? Well, I think that we should probably do it maybe somewhere around here. So right now on the results component, we're taking the household form value, or actually we shouldn't make it here, but let's talk about the flow of data for a second. So when the results component spins up, and by the way, this is the results component where it says your results, and here they all are. What we're doing is we're just grabbing the form value itself, right? We're just pulling the form value and we're saying, great, pull that in. Maybe what we should do here is we could kind of do this two ways. Number one, I would make the same argument as the get SLCSP estimate class method, that this is not the place where we want to inject any sort of business logic. We really just want to pass this value to the method, and that's it. So this method here, which is really just calling the SLCSP method from the service, again, not the place to do any kind of business logic. But what we could do is we've injected our household service. What we could do is say, we could say like transformed value, which is going to be household form value. And we could say it is this dot household service dot get transformed value. Okay. So now what we're doing is we're kind of providing a layer of indirection, and we're saying, you know what, instead of getting this household form value natively, and this is literally just whatever the form is, get the value, no transformation of any kind. Now we're kind of saying, hey, actually just get the transformed value. Okay, now this is still happy. Get SLCSP estimate still requires that form value, and so it's typed the same. And now what our error is that this thing doesn't exist, and so we have to write it. Great. And so we'll come over to our service, and let's see, these getters should really be up here. Let's put those up here. And then we have a class method, and then we're going to have another class method called get transformed value. All right, and that is going to return the household form value. Now, just for a moment, just to satisfy everything and get rid of these errors, let's return this dot household form dot value as household form value. All right. The reason we have to do that is because, and this is a TypeScript thing having to do with strictly typed forms that I personally do not totally understand, and so I'm still learning. But there is something about this value where you can see all of these partials because things aren't actually required. I'm not totally sure why that is, and I'm also not totally sure why those errors aren't going away. I'm going to restart ESLint, but we'll look into that in a second. Yeah, looks good. Looks good. So right now, literally all I have done here is just provided a layer of indirection. That is purely what I've done, is said, hey, instead of injecting or passing the form value itself, let's provide an intermediary value driven by a method that for now just returns this dot household form dot value. All right, so I hope you can understand that we haven't really changed anything at this point, but what we've done is we've set ourselves up to make a transform, okay? And so here's essentially what we need to do. First is we need to const form value, let's say original form value equals this dot household form value as household form value. Okay. And we can also original form value. This is also another layer of indirection. Isn't that cool? So now, whatever the original form value is, which is right here, now we're going to do that. Except now we actually want to make the transform. And so I'm just going to help myself out here. And I'm going to type in some comments. We want to duplicate the primary member's residence to all other members of the form. That is what we're trying to do, all right? And so the first thing that we're going to do, thank you, is get the primary member residence. So that is the original form value dot members, the first members and their residence, okay? Except it's residences, all right? So now we have this array of residences, and what we're going to do, I hope, is essentially overwrite the residences of all other members on the form. Now, I could do this. I could do this in one of two ways. The first way is by actually, nope, I take that back. So there were two ways to do this. One is by patching or setting the actual form values or the form controls with these values, but we're kind of past that point now, okay? We're kind of at the point where we need to call the endpoint to get the SLCSP estimate. And so we've got the form value as it was entered in the form. So as it was, and now we want to transform it. So let's keep going with this. And what we're going to do is we're going to say const transformed form value. And check this out. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pass in the original form value. So that kind of says, hey, whatever the original form value was, keep it as is. Keep it as is. And here we're going to say return the original, or return the transformed value. So all this really does, and I can actually comment this out just for a minute to say, you know, that really has no bearing. What we're doing is we're providing another layer of indirection, and we're saying that the transformed value is now the spread operator, the original form value, which just takes the entire form value and kind of unwraps it and puts it in here into the object. So we want to start there. And what we want to do is get the primary member residence, and then we want to take all of the other members. So let's see, const, ooh, this is going to be good. So let me talk to this. So I want to destructure the members. All right, so we've got the members, and we don't know how many additional members there are going to be, right? There may be just one, and there may be two, and there may be 20. I think the healthcare.gov form allows up to 99. But check this array destructuring out. We can say destructure the first element of the array as primary member, and then we'll do this spread destructuring as secondary members. Okay, so now the primary member is just the first member, but check out the type of the secondary members. Ooh, it's an array, right? And so what this is going to allow us to do is take the, let's say, secondary, let's see, new, say const new secondary members, and we are going to take those secondary members and map. And here's how we're going to map. We're going to take each member and we're going to say member dot residences equals, and we're going to overwrite those residences with the primary member residence. All right. And so now that we've got the original form value in here, we are going to overwrite that with members. So we're going to overwrite the members array with the primary member as it was and the new secondary members. All right, except the new secondary members is now an array of arrays. Why is that? I don't totally know. Let's see, secondary members. So each member, we're mapping member.residences to the primary member residence. And so why is this an array of arrays? I honestly don't know. Let's see if we can figure out why that is. So we've got the primary member residence, which is an array of residences. We've got, let's see, new secondary members. So first of all, when we, and I'm just going to kind of walk through this, I really have no idea what's happening here, but when we don't provide any explicit types, we allow TypeScript to infer types. And sometimes that can get us in a little bit of trouble, especially where we took things for granted or said, oh, I know what this is, so I'm not going to type it. So first of all, let's do this. Let's say that the new secondary members needs to be household member array. All right, we're going to need to import that. And so all of a sudden it says, wait a minute, this is like not an array of household members. This is an array of residences. And I can already see what I did. We have like mapped the member to the residences. And so I actually like did something really stupid here because I'm kind of like real-time programming and I didn't realize that I did that. But what we want to do is return a household member, right? Because we're mapping over the members. And so this member function signature should return, or this member function, its function signature, it should return a household member. And so immediately, wait a minute, that's not what we're doing at all. So let's add some curly braces around here. And let's do what we actually want to do, which is to return the member where their residences are now the primary member residence. And that is what we actually want to do. The squigglies, I can tell you right now, are because this is a one-line return statement, and so we don't actually need the return value. Although because we're returning an object, it wants to wrap it around parentheses, whatever. That's all good. So now, I believe, and this kind of looks a little complicated, but basically what we've done is we've said, grab the primary residence, grab all of the secondary members, and overwrite their residences with whatever the primary member has as their residence. And so let's see what we get now. It's probably going to still fail. Oh, it worked. Fantastic. So that was it. That was it. And now we have not only caught a bug or something about our program that wasn't functioning the way it should, and now we have fixed that through the process of writing a failed spec, writing the production code to pass that spec, and now we know our program is well tested and it's doing what it says it's going to do. All right, so let's just for a moment, this is just the last thing that we'll do here. This wants to come up here. That's fine. The last thing that we want to do here is just kind of make sure that our any of our hard-coded values in this two-member spec, that any of this stuff is replaced by the form itself. So I think one of the things that we did was let's see, did we do this in the one-member spec? One-member household, the zip code stuff. Did we do anything with that? No. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Type. There we go. We did. All right, so let's do that. So instead of typing in 04003, we're actually going to grab reference to that zip code and type that in. And so just make sure that this all passes. Yep, totally passes. That's fine. And I think that's it. I think that's what we want to do for just right this second. There are, of course, other places where there are things that are hard-coded, but we'll get to that in our next video. For now, I feel very good that as we start to build out these specs and start to experience test failures, that we're writing the production code to make these specs pass, and that is test-driven development at its finest. Awesome. All right, so that's it for now, and we'll see you in the next video.